A warm welcome to everyone for this session on generative AI and next fintech disruption. From FIS, we have Tom Weaver, Senior Vice President, Leverage Infrastructure Corporate Systems, Richard Peterson, Senior Director, Enterprise Strategy, Ravi Dangetti, Senior Director, IT Architecture, Gary Dumas, Data Science Manager, Leverage Infrastructure, AI, Data Science, and Machine Learning. I am Venkata Subramanian, part of Banking and Payments Client Experience Team, FIS Chennai, and I'll be moderating this session. Before we deep dive, I will give to the panel members to introduce themselves. Tom, would you like to go first?
Sure. Hello, everyone. I'm Tom Weaver. I head up our corporate systems and have been with FIS for 28 years. So a lot of context and background, and looking forward to the panel.
Thank you. Ravi, do you want to go next?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Ravishankar Dangeti, and I work as the head of data engineering for capital markets. And I manage the overall data and AML technology enablement for various products within cap markets. And I've been within the FIS organization for 5 years, and I've been in the financial services industry for more than 15 years now. And I have spent significant amount of my career in the data space.
Thanks, Ravi. Richard?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Richard Peterson. I'm heading up our data, AI, and ESG strategy for the capital markets. I've been with FIS for 4.5 years. Spent a lot of time in the capital market space, debt capital markets, and been fortunate enough to work with Ravi for most of those 4 years. So the two of us have been partners in crime from both the business side and the tech side. Looking forward to today.
Thanks, Richard. Gary? Gary, you are on mute.
Sorry, thanks. Yeah, sorry. Gary Duba. I lead the AI and machine learning group out of the CTO, kind of a COE centralized function. Been with FIS for almost 3 years now. Been working in data science and machine learning for better part of 15 years since graduate school, my PhD work. Really great space to be in, obviously really hot right now. It's being more and more democratized, and that's a lot of what my team does, is try to bring these solutions as general as we can and in innovative ways and to new and exciting use cases. So this is part and parcel to what we do, a conversation just like this one.
Okay, thanks, Gary. Okay, let's get into it. So we are seeing a rapid development in the AI earlier this year. And our customers as well as the end consumers are curious as well as cautious about how this technology is going to be used in the financial services, right? So what are the key developments in fintech landscape that you have observed recently, and how are we utilizing AI and Gen AI? Richard, do you want to go first?
I'll start us off. Yeah, sure. So that's a great question. I think it's something on everyone's minds. All of our clients are, constantly asking us about AI, about Gen AI specifically, and data, really data democratization and the ability to access data in any which way that they'd like. I think we've kind of moved from, data just being curated and utilized through an interface to now just data. Everyone just wants to get the data. They want access to the data, and then they want to utilize that data in multiple different ways, right? AI is now going to be the next generation for how to use the data, right? And specifically generative AI. So what we're doing is we're kind of thinking holistically here. We're trying to figure out the best ways in which our clients want to use data, want to use the data, want to interpret data. And we're thinking about the best practices that are out there from the AI perspective, because we work at FIS with all of the large partners, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, you name it, right? We're pretty much working with them in partnership in some way. And so what we're doing is we're evaluating use case by use case, how to best take advantage of AI, how to integrate it in workflows that are meaningful to our client, and be very specific with all of our products as to how we're going to take advantage of this. So it's exciting times, especially from the business side and from the tech side, to work on these tasks.
Yeah, and I'll follow that up. I think that's a really well said. And it's a new landscape for all of us, even those of us that have been working in the field, doing this kind of modeling, this kind of developing customized models. We're used to sort of training and tuning things. Even in the NLP space, large language models are very, very new. So we all kind of, the deepest you'd go before was like tuning BERT. Tuning BERT large was like a massive endeavor, huge compute effort. Now we're learning, we being the data scientists and AI practitioners, how to get used to not having to tune, basically just zero shot learning being what it is, that as a service, these models, it becomes a sort of trial and error and experimental procedure of what's the right tool for the job. You don't need to reinvent the wheel, and nor should you. It would be the amount of effort with the huge gamut of language models that are out there right now, for example. You don't want to recreate Llama 2. You don't want to recreate GPT-2 or GPT-4, excuse me, and ChatGPT. You don't want to recreate what Da Vinci's doing. You can leverage these, and so it becomes a sort of cost optimization and a compute problem more than anything, which is exciting. But you still need there's still a heavy hand of machine learning to be done in there in order to optimize what's feeding these models, right? We think of it as I look at all of this landscape as sort of now. We, in corporate speak, right? We've looked for insight generation for like a decades. We've heard about that, like, oh, the models give you the what, but we need even better models that give us the so what. And until now, that whole concept was nonsense. You didn't have anything that could actually do that unless you hard coded insights, right? Which, okay, a lot of us did that for a long time. LLMs, this truly is like a partner with you in the validation of your models. You feed it model output. So it's models. This is the world we live in now. Models feeding models, right? You give it a set of predictions that have come out of your a pipeline and say, hey, does this make sense? The way that you would ask a human the same question, and the model can validate what you're doing. It won't build you. You don't get away from doing time series or doing forecasting or any of the old school stuff that we do. But now you can ask a model, hey, I built this with blah blah blah. It's been trained on this kind of data, does this, and here's a forecast that it gives. Does this make sense, or what are the implications? Especially in fintech, we see this all over. We're doing this. Ravi and I were part of a project where we can integrate stuff like this into explaining liquidity forecasting. Like, hey, what's driving the high risk that's required of this? Whether it's capital adequacy amounts or what we have to capital holdings that are required. So it's a really this is like I do think there's a paradigm shift in our world. All of us are adapting to it, and we should all be taking advantage of it and as far as we possibly can.
Thanks, Gary. So, as a follow-up, Tom, can you elaborate in the enterprise area, right? I mean, what are the efficiency in using Gen AI?
So I loved how, Gary, you used the term "we're learning." And I think that's the case. We're learning, we're adapting. Everyone's working hard to determine how to leverage and govern Gen AI and large language models. Many of our use cases, and we're seeing this across the industry as well, but I have a bias towards internal versus internal with human in the loop scenarios, just because we're trying to learn how to control and manage that. Not so much the technology, but instead a big focus on the governance and providing transparency and building confidence in tools that they can scale and accelerate, but they equally excel and accelerate good, bad data, good and bad processes, good and bad logic. So I think our focus there's certainly a lot of opportunity from efficiency perspective. Our focus right now is really learning and adapting on internal use cases so that we can begin to expand those and have more confidence externally.
Thanks, Tom. Okay, so let's go a little deeper. Like, considering some of the emerging domains like the ESG, and as well as there are traditional, at the same time, we have traditional financial services that are existing, right? So can you please share, like, some of the use cases on how fintech can leverage the new Gen AI?
Yeah, I'll take that one, Venkat. So yeah, I mean, I agree with everything Gary and Tom just said. I think for us, right, we've been trying to think, as I mentioned, holistically about how we can take advantage of this, but we're also trying to not kind of put the cart ahead of the horse from the AI perspective. I think what we focused on are internal efficiency use cases from our perspective that will, take our products and modernize them. But then we've also thought about how we're going to take things to the next level. And so I think it's almost like kind of a step-by-step progression here. We're probably, an infant at this point with where everything is with AI. And we're going to get to be a toddler and eventually, a kid and grow up, right, to be an adult. The first use cases we're really focusing on are internal efficiencies and cost saving plays, right? So some of these things are going to be in the support functions. So using chatbots is a good example. Microsoft ChatGPT types of chatbots that can help with support for a lot of our products and services. So it'll be a first level of ask a question to the large language model, right, and see what comes back. And it will be trained, within a secure sandbox from our internal documents, our internal thought leadership things, right? So at the end of the day, if you're using our platform in some way, right, and you have a whole help file that you typically have to search through, or you have, frequently asked questions, things like this, right? A chatbot is obviously going to be able to do this very well, right? They're already able to do that. The next level is thinking from the customer standpoint, right? Well, we want to make sure our experience is 100% accurate. So when it's rolled out to customers, they can gain insights very quickly. So if they have a very simple first level question, I think all of us are going to experience this inside and outside of FIS, with customer service in some way. You have a question about your credit card. I think, coming soon, it's going to be it already is very difficult to talk to a person on the phone, but it's going to be that much harder to get to a person because you're going to have to go through these chatbots. But if they're done in such a way that it works very well, you won't ever really want to or need to speak with a live person because the chatbot will most likely be able to answer almost every question that comes at it. And it's the really more nuanced, human, detailed questions that we're going to need to push things further. So I think that's the start, right? It's sort of these chatbots and automation. Any types of areas in which we can automate our processes, automate ticket generation, automate, some of the things that are just very manual right now. I think we're focusing on all of those internally to use AI and use machine learning to sort of take away all of those pain points, right? And help people move on, our corporate workforce move on to more meaningful types of work versus just, copying and pasting and putting one thing from here to there. So I think those are the first use cases. From the ESG side, I mean, this is a really, very good use case for AI as it grows, right? ESG, for those that aren't familiar, it stands for environmental, social, and governance issues. It's something that I've worked on for the last few years. It's really exciting because it kind of makes you feel like you are helping companies grow, from the world perspective. But at the same time, ESG is really just a set of risk factors. It's a set of non-financial risk factors, other types of risk factors that people need to measure and understand, right? And as the growing importance is for reporting on ESG metrics and ESG characteristics of a company, it's going to be increasingly important to have AI and machine learning be part of that process with data. When you think about financial services, you think of financial information, right? Balance sheet, income statements, typical financial stuff that everybody knows. But when you think of ESG, I mean, that there's so many different sources. There are all these disparate data sources that are out there that need to come together to give full picture of how a company affects its community, its workforce, the broader environment, how the systems work together to do that. how the processes work together, corporate governance, all of these things, right? Whether a hurricane hits Florida, of course, that's going to affect the risk of FIS at our operations. So all of these things have different data sets that come from different places. And this is a perfect example of where AI can sort of cut through the noise, right? Think about all the big data sets. Most people don't have time in the day to even look at one data set fully, right? You're going to need the help of AI to really look at these big data sets, find correlations between things that may or may not be apparent, and surface insights, right, with business intelligence. And AI can do that, right? With the help of humans to be trained. You can go in, you can look at these different types of data sets. You can find some surface some insights and push them up to like a BI type of tool. And that content can be generated also through AI. So I can literally speak to an LLM and say, hey, I'd like to see a dashboard that's created that has, these 15 characteristics and set up in a pie chart and graphed in this way, and it'll be done within seconds, which, would take quite a long time for folks to put together themselves. There's a whole slew of use cases that we're looking at internally and we're getting legal approval for, but it's step by step. And for right now, it's kind of where are the things that we can focus it on that'll add a lot of value from an efficiency standpoint. And I think later on, it's going to be more customer focused and revenue generating types of standpoints.
Wow, thank you, Richard. That was comprehensive
Sure.
and interesting. I will add a little bit to that. I have the privilege of sitting on the FIS Gen AI task force. It's a combination of the legal team, security, technology, compliance, privacy, all of those considerations. And we have some insight and some visibility into pilot projects and activities that are going on within FIS. And I'll mention a couple of those use cases. In the area of FIS products, currently it's more leaning towards machine learning than Gen AI. I think we all mentioned earlier that there's a big focus with Gen AI on internal efforts first and kind of working our way out as we build confidence and trust in that. But in the FIS products area, for example, we see machine learning and adaptive behavior analytics being used to enhance fraud monitoring and decision making. It's fascinating stuff. In the client and colleague experience, our capital markets team is running a pilot right now to really help critical support personnel by taking information from knowledge bases and service tickets and training materials and assimilating that into a useful response for a critical support colleague, where instead of opening a ticket and taking a couple of days to research, they can actually respond accurately and timely right on the phone, right? And so it's super exciting. Still early days with that, but they're already seeing good results with their bench test or their desktop walkthroughs, I should say. In development and testing, everyone is super excited by the many flavors of LLM coding assistance. But I think there's still a lot of untapped benefit in the area of automation around the development lifecycle and testing. I think we're going to see huge lifts there. And then, of course, internal optimization. We saw a use case come through for AI/ML for hyperscale self-healing. So learning what we can from the transactions and incidents and activities that go on within our ecosystem, where we're the hoster, where we're providing services to our customers, and identifying and quickly resolving those problems to drive better availability and resiliency. There's already been a lot of success there, and a lot more because of the scale that these capabilities are bringing us. And I think I would be remiss to leave out our MS Copilot pilot. We currently have 300 users that are testing and figuring out what is the productivity impact to our BAU users, our colleagues in their day-to-day activities, to have this type of assistant build into their regular workflow through Teams and Outlook and PowerPoint and all of those productivity tools. So it's super exciting. It's been really fascinating to watch things form, and I'm looking forward to more of it.
You can literally have it 10 meetings for you, Tom. I've tried it. It's super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that you guys touched on all the major, I think great examples and things. Maybe only other piece I'll add, especially in the ESG side, is the power that I think these models and techniques bring to really democratizing this, and not just democratizing AI, but a lot of non-technical folks. We see this in the SRE and infrastructure spot. Copilot's a great example. It has a really good explain code module, right? So there's the obvious gains that come from code support, like, hey, help me write a function that's just like this, but now or even documentation in your code. I'm just writing comments and having it fill in the meat on the skeleton, right? Those are pretty standard, clear, yep, time saving, helps developers. But even non-developers that have to support, you get like service delivery teams and infrastructure that need to, historically they would have to go to the DevOps group or the tech dev teams and say, hey, could this release have just caused a bug, or is there, we're seeing, some kind of, whether it's outages or just, deployments surrounding, ambiguity. Now you have a new tool that you can feed, connected to your code base. We can plug it right into, GitHub and Bitbucket repositories and have it look and say, hey, here's an output, a trace or a log. Could this new deployment be driving the issues that we're seeing, whether it's stability or whatever the case is, outages, and it can do that kind of work. It can explain, and it can look at the code, and offer, again, non-technical teams and individuals to at least understand what even a language they've never used before is doing, in ordinary, the same way that you could Google and get a wiki on a write-up on what something's doing. Now you can get a write-up that's completely generated ad hoc, in real time, based on someone else's code, some really technical pieces there. So I just think, there's limitless possibilities, things that we're all still learning about how to do it, much rather than, again, this is sort of my mantra with AI has always been, it's not a replacement for people. It's an accelerant, an augmenter, right? It now gives you, it arms you with tools that you didn't have before that you can use to do your job better, and actually dig into terse and complicated technical things that before you would have been overwhelming. So I think this is it's limitless potential what we can do with this stuff.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. Okay, so now that we saw a couple of use cases, and one thing that I could understand is start small, look for the quick wins, at the same time learn from it, and then start building, right? So having seen these use cases, so Ravi, like, from the technology standpoint, now what is the technology play here? And what are the realistic things about the Gen AI, and
Right.
how is it like from? You can also touch upon the implementation side of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, as sorry, as Gary called out at the beginning of the session, right? Like, we are having a huge paradigm shift in the AI space. Previously, machine learning apps, they could only read and write content, but they could not generate or interpret the content. So, with the advent of Gen AI models like ChatGPT, right, it has changed. It has started to enable all our machines to be able to interpret our natural language and actually produce like almost human-like dialogue and content, right? So this is the type of an AI, where it can generate new content based on some prompts we give, and it is powered by huge foundational models that are already pre-trained on vast corpus of data. By the way, right, the foundational models, building them is a very complex engineering exercise. It's not something that we would want to undertake. It is like a lot of the vendors, they have invested significant amount of time and effort to build these models because it requires huge computation, and it needs access to huge data set, and based on that, these models get trained, and these needs to be maintained on a continuous basis. So one good thing is, we have a lot of these vendors like Microsoft, AWS, Google, and Facebook. Right, Microsoft came with OpenAI GPT-3, GPT-4. We have AWS, we have Bedrock and Hugging Face. Google came with Bard, and Facebook even launched Llama. Right, so there are multiple vendors who have come up with these foundational models. So what we are now looking at is not to build these foundational models, but rather leverage these models and actually, use them to build applications on top of them. All the vendors have provided number of access patterns, whether it is through APIs or the copilots, and using those, we want to, securely use these pre-trained foundational models and build apps in our ecosystem. What this means is we don't need to be like experts in the AML space, because the hard work is already done, and and they have provided these models, and all we're doing is trying to be creative and then try to look at our business scenarios and the use cases and try to use them in the context of in the context of the domain that they're working on, leverage these AML models more like a service, and then accelerate the development of new apps. So this would take the burden of development of the machine learning out of the equation, and almost like a citizen data scientist, right? Any analyst or any non AI guy, right, or any developer can actually pretty quickly use these foundational models and unleash the power of AI on their use case context. So the way we are doing it now, as we talked about multiple use cases, right? Like all of them, we're starting with an internal focus, like try to improve the productivity of our groups, productivity of our resources, and then probably go into the client space. But all our apps, right, all our applications we're thinking of is going to be using AI without actually doing the hard work there.
Thanks, Ravi. Since we are in the in the fintech space, and so what are the regulatory considerations and we need to have the guardrails with respect to the new technology that we are adapting, right? And then with especially with the increasing data reliance in the fintech, what ethical consideration and safeguards should be in place to protect the user data and privacy?
So I'll start with this one. I think a couple of us have already mentioned that these capabilities are really scaling and accelerating both good and bad, right? Good data, good logic, bad logic, good processes, bad process, which creates a lot of risk for us. And particularly in data privacy, but also in intellectual property, in license infringement. There's regulatory considerations. And one of the things that I think is a consideration that's a slightly different angle from the question is all of these considerations can paralyze us. It can cause us to move so slow or not move at all. And so that's one of the things that we're struggling to balance with the AI task force. How do we consider these risks and all these open litigations that are still unsolved and allow the company to move forward safely, because our customers depend on us to move forward safely and in a controlled and governed manner, but do it in a way that we're keeping up with the rest of the industry, the rest of the ecosystem and environment. So I think that's an important consideration that's not immediately apparent. The other thing, and I'll drill down into one of them that was like super interesting to me and surprising, in fact, was how much intellectual property and license infringement came into the picture. I was expecting privacy, and I think it'll evolve, and privacy will be more of an issue as we go further and further mature. But right now, IP and license infringement is a big deal. There's so many open cases. That's one of the things that we're wrapped around the axle on, and understanding and having the transparency that protects the products we're building, that protects the use of other people's intellectual property as well as our intellectual property is a major consideration that's really throwing our legal team for a loop right now. So fascinating, surprising to me. That's not the thing that I expected to hold us back, but it's certainly having an impact as we work through these logistics.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think from the regulatory perspective, right? I think for for all of us, we're trying to anticipate what's going to be needed and how best we can utilize, the AI and the data initiatives that we've all been talking about, right? So I think there's a lot of things to consider. I'm looking at it from the business side as well as from the ethics side, and from the kind of all the different ways that facets that you can look at in this sense. But from the business perspective, right? If I just take ESG as an example, right? There's a number of different regulatory bodies out there, and each country has their own framework for all of this. And so, we have to also consider, at FIS, we do business everywhere. We're global. And so, what may be allowable here in the US may not be allowable elsewhere, and vice versa. And that's, that goes back to your task force, Tom, and kind of figuring that stuff out too. So what are we allowed to do? That's first. And then second, from a reporting perspective, or from kind of a way of disseminating and communicating to our investors, stakeholders, and kind of customers, et cetera, right? How do we best utilize all this data and AI and machine learning to communicate, right? And that's sort of the next thing. It's sort of figuring out how to best take the data, put it into a format and a template, and make it accessible for regulators to consume. So even if they've come up with a framework, the UK has a framework for ESG reporting, principles for reporting investing, and things like this. How do we collect the data? How do we actually, are we confident that the data we've collected is a fit for those questions and for those interpretations and calculations, and then disseminate that to the stakeholders that need to see that, and fill in that template. I liken it to sort of a lot of the risk exercises that we've gone through in the past, including CCAR and some other things that banks typically go through, right? It's sort of the beginnings of that here with respect to regulatory efforts in the AI space.
Yeah, well said, gents. I'll just, I think just add on to that, little else to say. Like any AI, especially in finance, when we're talking about these very deep neural networks, in this case, they're not even models that we're tuning. They're just a pure black box, right? Where now, if the role of much of the practitioner here, even the data scientist, is a curation process, right? We're pre-processing and feeding with the right prompts, and then we're post-processing the output to make sure that it's what's being fed to a user is consumable and meaningful, and actually addresses the question that's being asked. It's obviously all along with the data privacy. There's just all kinds of, if you have a model, or you're grabbing to get the right context, you have to grab all kinds of documentation, or you're giving some huge prompts, right? That's the great thing about these is it's like transfer learning on the fly again, right? But we can't explain. So I think that's another argument for why we are starting purely internal with this. You can't just go out to to market with something that it could give. I mean, hallucinations are a real problem, right? Like, it can just make stuff up if you prompt it. If your prompting process is not, and your post processing, the way you evaluate what it's kicked out of this black box, if that's not airtight, you can get some wild fabrications. You can, again, just like we can't have models out there. If you're in the lending space, and you have a model that is is biased based on a number of factors, right? And anything it's using demographic area to basically a prejudice. You're showing that you've trained a biased model based on just the data that you fed it. Well, here it's the same. You can be prompting something and inadvertently generating biases in these models, and inadvertently getting it. If you talk about things that are, if you give it that's what we've seen. These, when ChatGPT first came out, and journalists were talking, I got the model to tell me it loved me. It told me to leave my. Now they've put guardrails on that. But if you use that kind of emotional language or sentiment of your prompt, you're tuning the model on the fly to think, it wants me to talk about this or that, or if you want. So if we just dump everything into these prompts, you can, the internet is full of stuff. If you're feeding it, really biased, you get the wrong document that you're pushing through this thing, and then having it answer a user question. It can say some pretty off the wall stuff, right? So that's
Yeah.
to put it nicely, you know. So these are the kinds of things that, again, before you'd ever go to market with it, you know, extensive, like I say, airtight, sort of. That's why we not just testing, but just making sure, again, because this is not something that you can, you know, that we can that we're training ourselves. You're building in house. Some people are. You can tune some of these, like I say, but it's a massive. I mean, if you're just using them as a service, yeah, you've got really, you know, the prompting that you're feeding through, and like I say, that pre and post processing has to be extremely explainable, you know. So you can when if again a regulator comes in and says, why did it say this to this person, you better have a solid answer, or else you could be in all kinds of violations and discriminatory practices, all kinds of stuff that, you know, is just nothing to mess around with.
Yeah. So, you know, just to add to that, right, from an implementation point of view, these are like very important considerations, right? Because the accuracy and reliability of the model is a key one, because the models, as Gary called out, the models are hallucinating. So, you know, when we are implementing any of these projects, right, we have a step of quality control, you know, whenever the model gives us an output. So before it goes out to the target consumer or an external, you know, external entity, so we need to have a full, well-defined quality control process, some human entity there, making sure that the responses are in line with whatever standards we're defining, and make sure it goes out, you know, so that we don't attract any legal challenges out of that.
I think that's a
Thank
key
you.
point, Ravi, because the
Yeah.
human aspect of all of this, right?
Yeah.
Everybody thinks that when you use AI that it's taking away humans, but right now
Yeah.
it's almost like, you know, instead of artificial intelligence, augmented intelligence, right?
Exactly.
It's kind of
Exactly.
Yeah.
that's
You know,
kind of a better way of thinking about it.
yeah, you know, because I think that has been one of the, you know, the view of artificial intelligence, right? People always think it is going to replace capabilities, replace you know, the humans, right? But it's not the case, right? Because it has to be seen as an augmented intelligence that can make you do your job better than what it is right now, or make it simple for you, right? That's the way we need to think about
Exactly.
all these things.
Right, right. And FIS, I mean, one of the core values of FIS is you know, providing a good client experience, right? So that does the Gen AI will help in enhancing the client experience, and as well as at the same time maintain the human touch. Any thoughts on that?
I'll start with a brief comment on that. Short answer, yes. I previously mentioned the FIS use case of enabling client agents, right, or advocates and support personnel to deliver faster, more complete, more accurate. These capabilities are going to yield more time for those support personnel to focus on meaningful engagements. But they'll also do it in a way that those personal engagements will carry the credibility that comes from the confidence that the client has in that agent's ability to provide faster, more complete, more accurate responses. So I think that combination of things, freeing up time to engage on more meaningful engagements, as well as that agent or that critical support personnel now carries the credibility of being able to respond timely and more accurately and more comprehensively than they previously were, is kind of a double punch that will drive better client experience, that will drive better engagements and more meaningful engagements. So yeah, that's my short answer is yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Tom. Richard, do you want to add to it?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've kind of covered it, but I agree. I mean,
Okay.
I've just been thinking for a second. I think the customer is always going to be number one for us, right? And so the experience of the customer is super important. And so whatever we look to kind of deploy and work into our workflow for everyone, it's thinking from that customer perspective. How do we have them have the best experience, right? How do we make our products modern, and how do we engage with our customers in ways that are more meaningful, so that they don't need to spend a lot of time doing what they need to do, right? They can come in, get what they need, and go back to, you know, their normal job, whatever they need to do to move things forward. And so the way I think about, you know, AI is sort of from the human perspective. How can I save time on the tasks that I, you know, don't want to waste my time on? How can I sort of use this technology to sort of do things quicker, but in a more meaningful way? I think a lot of the co-pilots that we've seen from Microsoft are interesting from that perspective, because you can now gain insights into a meeting that you were not able to make, right? We can actually have Copilot generate insights from this panel, right? And sort of takeaways, right? Follow-ups. I've even seen it show tone. So it would actually say, Ravi was super excited when he talked about the progression of AI and chatbots and et cetera. And Tom was kind of, agnostic as to whatever. It tries to think like a human and tries to tell you what you need to know, right?
Yeah.
And I think in this day and age, right, when we've got our calendars full, we're very busy with everything we need to do. A lot of times we don't have time to do the things we actually need to do. We're kind of talking about it, and then we try to find the time outside of that to actually do it. Hopefully some of this technology as it grows will really help us to take things forward and use that, right, in a more meaningful way, versus just just kind of like the manual task stuff. I think it's going to gain into this insight and helpfulness that everyone's going to eventually kind of have by their side, right, as their own personal assistant to give them what they need to know and take their workflow and their lives forward in that sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Totally agree. I think, yeah, there's a lot of things we're even exploring now that, again, I love that. Like, gone are the days like tone. I mean, those of us who've been in the space, like, sentiment analysis was a thing. It's a real, like, you'd look at, tuning. Oh, we use Vader, or we use, TextBlob. It starts on Yelp reviews. You don't need that anymore. You just, I mean, these are so good. They don't need to be tuned to new named entities for, NER. Because from context, they can tell, yeah, you're talking about a server name here. This, I can just tell the surrounding words. This is, I've never heard of this server. I've never used, whatever, this cryptic name. But in doing that, it's sort of like, I was in consulting for a number of years, and the, clients, that was how knowledge graphs got really popular, right? Is everybody wanted Google. I just want to be able to Google my own data. I want to be able to Google my own, and get that same, capability. And it was always sort of, well, unless you have the kind of knowledge graph that Google has, you're not going to get the same type of quality in your searches. But okay, we can build that. Now this can, just dump a bunch of, hey, there's a client question or a query that comes in, or even an issue, and we can just throw all of the documentation that we have from our own KB into that prompt. I mean, they're big. Just let the AI read all about the systems that this user's talking about, and then summarize probably what they're, right away, real time, turns around and says, hey, here's probably what's going on, or here's what you need to do. User, I need a password reset. No problem. Here's where you go. Boom, boom, boom. He grabs it, reads it, go do this. That little box that we all want from Google. Like, nobody clicks a link anymore, right? You don't Google something and click the link. It's sad whether Google gets a lot of grief in this. They still, I mean, they were one of the first that allowed us to tune any language model. Like poor Google, like BERT was a Google, that was their, contribution. Now, OpenAI is just like BERT, where you've read the entire internet, right? But now you get that box for free. We're able to now, where before, again, hey, a user, I want to be able to query my own data and get the Google quality type of result or answers, on the fly. It does. Just throw it all. That's, like I said, you have a good preprocessor up front. Any just basic keyword search that we can do now, oh yeah, this is a client that's in this system. They're asking about this topic, this category, the subcategory, whatever. Throw it into a prompt. Everything you've got, throw the whole, the kitchen sink in there. AI will read it. It knows it's read much larger. It's read the whole Grapes of Wrath. It can read your wikis. It can read your, and then it can make sense of it and turn around and say, yep, here's your problem. Here's what you probably need to do, blah, 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 and give meaningful results. And even, like I said, anticipate if the user is annoyed or satisfied or whatever. Like, I mean, like I said, the whole, it's a new ball game. So again, we're careful again with those guardrails we were talking about, how we bring this to a broader, a user base, but very specific and targeted, use cases like this are sort of the things that we're thinking of and already testing now.
Okay. So beginning of this month, FIS did a research with help of did a survey and got the insights around from 2,000 plus executives and published the innovation report, right? So how do you foresee the Gen AI or the new tech will help in addressing the some of the key risks, like the strategic and the financial risks?
Yeah, so from the innovation perspective, I mean, I think we're looking to modernize and really take forward everything that we're doing, right? It kind of goes along with all the themes that we just had. I think it has to play a big part in it, and that's why we're evaluating all of these different use cases. We're kind of taking our baby steps because we realize that we have to put it into everything that we're doing going forward. I think every company and all of our competitors, all of our peers within the industry is doing the same thing. So I think, from that perspective, from the innovation perspective, I can speak to it from my perspective as well. We've been very focused on it, right? We've actually formed a brand new strategic partnerships and innovation team within the corporate strategy group in the capital markets. That's the team that I'm currently on. And so we realize the importance of this, right? It's not just sort of an afterthought. It's not something that we have to, kind of figure out how to do on our own. We need a focused group, which we now have, that can drive these things forward with our partners, right? And I say that again with our partners because, I think Gary mentioned this earlier, right? It's not something that we really can do on our own, right? This is something that is bigger than all of us, and we have to realize that and kind of work with the folks and the experts that are out there together to push everything forward, to push the industry forward. And the industry realizes this as well, right? And that's why you're seeing so much adoption so quickly. It's because not everybody is sitting there recreating the wheel, on their own. And so, from that innovation perspective, I think, you probably saw in the report, right? FIS is scoring very well. FIS is doing very well in strategy with respect to innovation and pushing things forward within the financial services. And that's because we're embracing this new technology. I'd like to see us embrace it quicker, just like everyone would, right? I mean, I think the possibility is limitless here. It is just dependent on our ability to move things forward quickly and take a bit of risk as well with that. Put a lot of resources towards it, and then push any initiative forward that we think we can have quick wins and really do our deep dives into the next steps, right? Make sure we have a defined roadmap of strategic initiatives with respect to AI and machine learning that are tangible and that we can action on. I know Robbie's a big part of that with me. We're sort of thinking about what is next, right? Yeah. What's now? What is coming in 2024, which is, the near term future, and then what's beyond that. And, we touched upon it with some of these use cases with code building. I think, that's probably the next place we go, where we're actually creating products and solutions and, enhancements to our products in a quick way, right? We're able to utilize this technology to just sort of push something out very quickly, where it would normally take months or years to develop. This is going to be game changing, I think.
Yeah. So just to add to what Richard said, right? We're not really looking at building full-blown AI models here, right? We're talking about leveraging the, whatever has already been built and working, working like a seamless technology. We're trying to pick that up and then put it in the hands of, experts in the domain, experts in the market, so that they can use that to augment their existing, capabilities. So, it is kind of becoming an engineering exercise rather than an AML kind of a development work, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's right.
So since the AI and Gen AI are all the emerging technologies, right? So, Gary and Ravi, do you want to share your insights with respect to the skill gap, and what is your suggestion to address this the specific demand that we are looking at?
I think Ravi, just touched on it really eloquently, as always. Ravi, it's a pleasure. It's that so much of the space, because we can leverage these models as a service. It's actually, I think this enables a new wave of, again, where before before there was just this gamut of LLMs, and we're spending a lot of time talking about language because that's for much of what we do. I mean, if we were an automobile company, then vision and driverless cars would be the the hot thing. But that's been around for I mean 10 years now. It's this is like that language just took this massive leap forward, and without training a model off the shelf, you can get something that again becomes a sort of engineering exercise. To me, it really opens the door, and it offers support, like we said, that you can get technical explanations, that these are models that can explain themselves. So you can on the fly sort of also teach the the practitioner, the user, and they can use these as tools. It's a profoundly powerful tool in the toolbox, right? You do still need and that's the nice thing, is it becomes more of engineering tools, but again, to understand and to I think to feed these models correctly, there's still that skill set, like you mentioned. Like, I mean, cloud engineering is now on steroids, right? So all of the but I've been saying that to people that are going into machine learning and AI since since GCP and AWS and Azure were a thing. Like, that's exactly as we've said. Data strategy is such that now we have the compute to do the stuff that we could never do. I mean, you could do it to scale some massive modeling. And whatever a decade ago was big data and predictive, right? That was the big, like, now that we're in the scaled, the data space where you can do this kind of stuff, and these models are out there, for again, as a service. I'd say really understanding cloud engineering and the set of how to implement these models, but and then how to use, again, where for me, for the AI practitioner and looking to really take advantage of this and optimize their footprint with it, it becomes how to again build that pipeline of models feeding models, right? Like how to optimize what goes in end to end. There's no human anymore, but I'm like we talk about, you're grabbing all the right prompt, I'm grabbing all the right context, from maybe a simple query, from a simple question. Like, you're now the go-between. Your models are feeding this large language model to give it enough context. And that still requires a fair amount of heavy hand of AI and machine learning, and then to post-process what comes back from that, from that LLM, and actually make sure, again, you're checking it for quality. You're automating a lot of the things to make sure that you're looking for, could it be hallucinating? How much of the prompt did it just spit right back out at me in the answer, or is it actually giving me new information that could be meaningfully accurate? That's the kind of stuff that the AI and machine learning practitioner, as opposed to, and there is still obviously the huge research base of building new versions of these models, tuning them, taking something like you can go onto Hugging Face's leaderboard right now. I want a model that understands, I can feed it a forecast and have it explain. Well, Zephyr is the big one right now, right? There's the highest, what's the new ARC score, what the analytic reasoning score on, they're just going to keep coming out. And obviously, there's teams that'll continue to contribute to that development, but also if that's not where you want to live, you don't have to. You can just be a user and just pull it all in, right? It's just like Robert said. So there's no end of spots. So that's good. Like I said, if you've got the team who can do that kind of stuff and want to actually tune it and make your own customized versions of it, you can. And if you've got teams who just want to pull in the best, the as a point in time, best version of it and use it now, you can do that too.
Yeah. So just to add to that, right, because I will try to cover it from an implementation point of view within the organization, right? Because if you see cap markets or any of the FIS groups within the organization, it's very difficult to have like a machine learning engineer or a data scientist in each and every team. We have hundreds of products, right? And we don't necessarily have enough talent to be able to scale, right? To be able to accelerate all the groups, right? So the way I think about this, and as I was calling out earlier, right, it is not the AI/ML capability that we need. It's the how how you use it is what is going to drive us forward here. So I kind of look at it as like as a multi-step approach. Like, you want to have a lot of self-service, low-code, no-code, AML capabilities, because with the advent of Gen AI, it is possible, right? We don't need to focus on building the models. We need to focus on the prompts. So the prompt engineering can be done by analysts and and developers, right? They don't need to have a huge understanding of it. So the focus of introducing a lot of these low-code, no-code systems and co-pilots and the ability to enable the individuals is an important one. And also introducing the culture of citizen data scientists, because I want each and every product team to think about how can I augment my current product capabilities by leveraging this AI, and I don't need to I can leverage these tools and augment it very, very quickly, right? So that kind of a approach of citizen data scientist is a culture that we need to focus on. And we're also looking at an enablement angle. So we have like a small central team of AML experts. So what we do is we can use them to help the product teams to go on that journey. So if they need to use these tools, or if they need to build models, all these things, right? We don't need to have an engineer in every team, but the central team can look at it and understand the product and give them the guidance, and the product teams can, using their low-code, no-code tools or Gen AI capabilities, they can really go through that execution, right? So I think that is, I think, that is a way in which we would want to go, because we have a small limited talent pool and we want to use them in an effective manner so that all our products can benefit out of that. And also Richard called out earlier, right, the strategic partnerships with vendors, because we do have some expertise internal, but there is a lot of access to, we have access to all the big vendors, right? AWS, Microsoft, Google, Snowflake, all these vendors, we have access to the talent. And if at all we need to get expertise, we can partner with them, and then we can augment our central teams so that they can actually get the products done through. So I think this is the way, I think, we need to have innovative ways of actually scaling our capabilities to accelerate the product development.
Thanks, Ravi. So all good things comes to an end. So Richard, do you want to share your conclusion remarks?
No, I think this has been a great discussion. I think for everyone watching, right, if you're not excited, like, get excited. This is super cool stuff to look at. It's really going to change our lives. I mean, it's not just a work thing, right? It's sort of an everyday thing that's going to affect us all, right? And if you're interested about any of these things, right, reach out to us. We need people to kind of help with all of this, right? We're super, in case you can't tell, right, we're all super excited about this because it's new, it's interesting, and it affects the world around us. It affects everything that we do. And so the more that we can take advantage of it, the more that we can get some unique perspectives, right? The more that we can kind of incorporate what everyone's thinking into all of our efforts going forward, the better we're going to be able to kind of accelerate, move quicker with our partners, and really build and create something new here, and kind of take everything forward, right? So, I encourage you to ask questions, get involved with it. We have a number of different, usage groups and other things and other ways in which you can get involved throughout FIS, but it's exciting times. So, I wish all of you the best, and hope that you'll reach out to us, because we need your help.
Thank you, Richard, and I thank all the panel members, and thanks everyone for watching this session. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.